One of my favorite aspects about classical music is that it so often tells a big, long, epic story. Now, a lot of people, when they're listening to classical music, are focused mainly on the melody. But it's important for us to remember that most melodies need to be supported by harmonies or triads, and that is what we are going to learn about today. Now, a triad is made out of 3 notes stacked in thirds. Sounds something like this. There's a bottom note, up a third, up a third. Here's a bottom note, 2 thirds above, third, third. Here's another one. These sound very familiar to us. Now, the 3 notes have names. The bottom note is always referred to as the root. The middle note is always referred to as the third, and the top note is always referred to as the fifth. This makes sense because the middle note is a third above the root and the top note is a fifth above the root. Now, it doesn't matter what triad we are playing, the notes will change, but we will still refer to the bottom always as the root, doesn't matter where it is, and the third and the fifth. I'm going to show you that now. So let's play an E major triad. In this case, E is the bottom note. Another name for E in this context is the root of the triad. So E is the root, G sharp happens to be the third in this case, and B is the fifth. So we have a triad, it's built out of 3 notes, it's stacked in thirds, and the bottom note is called the root, third, fifth. I happen to play an E major triad, but let's play a completely different triad, and you'll see that those terms remain the same. Let's play an A minor triad. Sounds like this. It's 3 notes stacked in thirds. In this case, A is the bottom note, and now we call A the root, C the third, and E the fifth. So this was an E major triad. E was the root. But in an A minor triad, A is the root. Both are bottom notes. We'll do one more. Let's play a D major triad. 3 notes, third, 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 and D is the root in this case. The middle note is the third, it's F sharp, and the top note is the fifth, it's A. So not only is this called D, but in the context of a D major triad, it is called the root. Not only is this called F sharp, but in the context of a D major triad, it's called the third. And not only is this called A, but in the context of this D major triad, it's called the fifth. It's going to get a lot more complicated, so pay attention. Next thing we need to know is how to create major triads or minor triads. Major triads are constructed out of a major third and a perfect fifth. This is different from minor triads. Minor triads are built out of a minor third and a perfect fifth. Let's do that on the piano now. We'll take the note C. C is our root, and we're going to build the C major triad. So we have our root ready. Now, to build a major triad, we need to first create a major third above the note C, and I know that a major third above C is E. And the last thing we need to do is write a perfect fifth above the root, which in this case, a perfect fifth above C is G. And this is a C major triad. We know that because this is a major third and a perfect fifth. We'll do one more. Let's take a G major triad. G is our root. To construct a G major triad, we need to write a major third above the root. A major third above G is B. And then we finish it off with a perfect fifth above G, which is D. That's a perfect fifth altogether. 3 notes, root, third, fifth, major third, perfect fifth, G major triad. Good. Now let's build minor triads. We're going to do the exact same thing, except the third is going to be minor instead of major. Let's look closely on that. Let's build a minor triad on the note D. So D is our root. Now instead of a major third, we're going to write a minor third. A minor third above D is F. You might have clued into the fact that you need to know your intervals in order to do this. And then we have to write a perfect fifth above D, which is A, and all together they form a D minor triad. The minor third and the perfect fifth, root, third, fifth, D minor. Let's do another one. Let's build a minor triad on F sharp. F sharp is our root. A minor third above F sharp is A. A is our third, and a perfect fifth above F sharp is C sharp. C sharp is our fifth. Root, third, fifth, F sharp minor triad. And that's how you do it. Now, more specifically on this exam, they're going to be asking you to write tonic triads, subdominant triads, and dominant triads. What does that mean? That means that first, you have to start working in a key, and then the root of the triad you're writing is determined by its relationship to that key. So if, for example, if you're asked to write the dominant triad of C major, the dominant triad of C major, its root is built on the dominant of C major. And we know from several lessons past that the dominant of C major is G. Therefore, you are writing a triad where the root is G. I'll show you on the piano. Here's a C major scale. Let's talk about the tonic triad of C major, the subdominant triad of C major, and the dominant triad of C major. The tonic triad of C major is built on the tonic of C major, and the tonic of C major is C. Up a third, up a third. We took these notes from the key signature of C major, and we are left with a C major triad, and we can refer to this C major triad as the tonic triad of C major. What about the subdominant triad of C major? The subdominant of a C major scale is F, which means the subdominant triad of a C major scale is built on the note F. F is going to be the root. F, up a third, up a third. We took these notes from the key signature of C major, and we get an F major triad. This is the subdominant triad of C major. This is the tonic triad of C major, and this is the subdominant triad of C major, and as I said earlier, the dominant triad of C major is built on G, because the dominant of a C major scale is G. C1 or C2, 3, 4, 5. G is the dominant, up a third, and we get a G major triad where G is the root, and in the context of C major, this is the dominant triad of a C major scale. Let's look at minor scales. Let's do D minor. Let's find the tonic triad of D minor, the subdominant triad of D minor, and the dominant triad of D minor. Here's a D minor scale, D minor harmonic. The tonic triad of a D minor scale is built on the tonic of D, and the tonic of D is D. Up a third, up a third. We took these notes from the key of D minor. This is D minor's tonic triad, and it happens to be a D minor triad. The subdominant of D minor is G. Therefore, a subdominant triad will be built on the note G. And we're taking the B flat from D minor's key signature. So the subdominant triad of a D minor scale is G minor, root, third, fifth. Now, to write a dominant triad in a minor key, it's important to remember that you will always be using, for this exam, you will always be referring to the harmonic version of the minor scale, which means the dominant triad in a minor scale includes the minor scale's leading tone, which means usually if you're working with key signatures, you have to physically write that in. Let's go back to D minor. Let's write the dominant triad of D minor. The dominant note of D minor is A. So the dominant triad of D minor's root is A, up a third, up a third, up a third. This isn't quite right. We are in D minor and we need to add the leading tone of D minor. The leading tone of D minor is C sharp. This is the subtonic. Not right. We need to raise that C to a C sharp. And that is the correct version of D minor's dominant triad. So there was a lot of new terms for today. In a minute, we are going to go over to the whiteboard and I will show you all of that in writing, and I hope it'll be a little easier to understand there. The other thing I have to teach you, which I will do at the whiteboard because I can't do it here, is the two labeling systems of triads we need to know. You need to know how to label a triad in two different ways. We need to know how to use root quality chord symbols, and we need to know how to write functional chord symbols. Root quality chord symbols are often used by pop and jazz musicians because they can exist without relationship to a key signature, and they are always written above the staff. I guess jazz music and pop music cycles through keys more fast than classical music in some cases, and they don't need to hold the key signature in their head, I guess the same way classical musicians do. Functional chord symbols are what classical musicians use. They are written below the stave, and you can't write them without first knowing the key of the music you are in. So functional chord symbols work in tangent with key signatures. They are written below the staff, and root quality chord symbols that pop and jazz musicians use don't need a key signature to exist. But they both represent the same thing, and fortunately you will know how to use both. So before I go to show you those two labeling systems, let's just briefly review everything we just learned and how to write triads. If you need to write a major triad, here are the steps. First is to write the root. Then step 2 is to write a major third above the root. And step 3 is to follow that with a perfect fifth above the root, and you will hear or see a major triad. Now minor triads are just slightly different. Step 1 is the same. You write the root. Then step 2 is to write a minor third above the root, not a major third. And the last one is again the same. You follow that up with a perfect fifth. All right, so let's go over to the whiteboard now and see all that stuff in writing.